Welcome to another episode of Lee with Jeffrey podcast. It is our honor today to have in the studio a person that has demonstrated the resilience required to overcome the setbacks that life has thrown her way unexpectedly, and what sometimes has given her the pause to say, am I going to make it? Am I going to overcome it? And each and every time, through determination and her resilience, she has overcome. And she has been able to not only overcome those areas, but she has been able to succeed at attaining the goals that she predetermined prior to the setbacks. In her life, she's been through not only knee surgery, open heart surgery, but has also had the setbacks of dealing with romantic and emotional circumstances that could have caused her to stop and go another way, but she decided to overcome them as she stayed the course, the road less traveled. Today in our studio, we have Ashley Viera, an example of resilience and determination, an example of what life can teach you in every setback, and taking every difficult moment and making it a lesson versus an obstacle in your life. Ashley, thank you for coming today and joining us here in Lee with Jeffrey. We're super excited about having the listeners be able to understand your story and live your story through our conversation today, because there's so many people out there that could benefit from that determination and that strength that you've had. First, tell us a little bit about who Ashley Viera is.
Well, thank you for having me today. Ashley Viera is a 24-year-old female. She is a nurse, RN, and I'm a very bubbly, happy person. Indeed, I've been through a lot in my life in those short 24 years. And I'm currently working on my nurse practitioner program.
Awesome. What school are you at?
I'm at West Coast University.
Wow. Well, how long have you been a nurse?
I've been a nurse for almost 2 years now. Yeah.
How's that experience been for you?
It's been beautiful. I've been able to help a lot of patients, sharing my story to them. And I've helped a lot of people overall, get the proper care and show them that, there's someone who cares for them out there.
Why nursing?
I chose nursing because, like I said, I truly enjoy giving the care to the patients, explaining to them, educating them on disease processes, how to take their medications. Sometimes I feel like the healthcare is just, oh, this is what you have to take, but they don't take the time to explain to the patients what's really going on. And that's why I went into it, because I like educating the patients and making sure that they understand what's going on and what they need to do to get better.
Nursing has a lot of pathways, hospital, doctor's office. Which pathway do you have and why?
Well, I do have some background in the emergency department. I loved it. It was chaos. But it did bring me a lot of panic attacks. I felt like, because it's just go, go, go. And I didn't have the time to, really sit down and talk with my patients and give them the care that I wanted to. It was more quantity over quality. So I left the emergency department and I decided to go more into the outpatient fields. Now I'm doing pulmonary care and I truly enjoy it. It's, we deal with a lot of COPD patients, patients with pulmonary fibrosis, asthmatics, and especially in Miami with, the humidity and the seasons changing, we get a lot of patients on a daily basis.
What office do you work with?
I work for South Florida Pulmonary Care.
Awesome. And who's the doctor there?
His name is Dr. Jorge Sanchez Masiquez.
Wow. Are you learning a lot from him?
Yes. I am very honored to be under his wing. He's showing me so much. And I'm very proud to be working in his team.
Let me ask you, Ashley, I know that a lot of nurses, when they graduate, they have to make the decision of where they're going to work and who they're going to choose to be the doctor they work with or the group of doctors or hospital. What would you say to all of them as they're making the decision is the most important thing to take into account?
Definitely. It can be overwhelming and challenging. But my honest opinion, and I think you just have to go with what you want to do, right? And what you see your goals. If, for example, I want to be a nurse practitioner and I want to be in the specialty area, right? More outpatient. So for me, I didn't think staying in the hospital would be exactly where I needed to be, because it's not where I want to be in the future. So I think you just need to go based off of what you foresee yourself in 5 years and decide from there.
Is studying to be a nurse a very difficult career? Is it time consuming? Is there struggles?
Definitely.
What would you say to the audience around that journey?
Yeah, no, definitely. It is time consuming. You have to be very dedicated and you do have to love it. People go into it because of the money, because of the great hours that you work 12-hour shifts. But unfortunately, that's not everything. You know, you have someone's life in your hands at all times. You're responsible. You know, the doctors just come in, give you orders and bye, you know? So at the end of the day, you are the one that patient is there for, you know? So it's hard, but as long as you truly love what you do, it's a beautiful career.
Is the schooling difficult, and what types of commitments or preparations do you think that you need to do prior to starting the schooling part, given that a lot of our listeners may be mothers, may have 2 children, 1 child, married, not married? What kinds of preparations do you need to do prior to starting schooling for nursing?
Well, I think that time management is the biggest thing when it comes to nursing school. You do have to set aside time for studying. You do have to do like simulations. You need to do clinicals, lectures. So the part of the bachelor's, which is the BSN part, it's the most difficult time because you that's the crunch time, you know, that's where you're learning everything, because most students will come from zero. So definitely you know, you need to have time management, you know, prepare a schedule and be like, okay, from this time to this time I'm going to study, from this time to this time I'm gonna look at my notes, and just based off of that.
You were studying nursing during COVID, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
How is that different, and how did that impact your overall outcome?
Yeah, I was a student in 2020, and I was just starting my core part of it, which is when you go into fundamentals, med surg and stuff like that. And well, our clinicals got canceled because, you know, they didn't want the students going into the hospitals. And we had to learn like from a system called vSim. And you know, it's different because, you know, it's just robots and, you know, you're just pressing buttons and you're not having those interactions with patients. So you don't know how to walk into a room and properly like introduce yourself, say hi to the patient, like, you know, do all of that. So thankfully, I think I had a lot of luck, and I only missed 1 semester off of no clinicals, and the rest I was able to qualify for the rest, and have that like in-person experience with the patients.
That's great. Do you think that the in-person experience was very valuable, and how different do you think it would have been if you did not have that?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Because in the hospitals, you get to do your skills. So I learned how to do IVs, how to insert Foleys, stuff like that, which of course online you cannot do none of that. So when I graduated and I stepped foot into a hospital licensed, I felt, okay, you know, maybe I just need to work a little bit more on the skills, and, you know, because I think with the practice is what causes perfection. But I was like, I know how to do it. I know the principles of it. Rather as to if we were just online, I would have been freaking out. I would have been like, oh my God, like, where do I start? Am I doing this right? You know? So I'm glad, you know, I ended up having the full experience.
So when you don't work in a hospital and you work for just one doctor, there has to be a certain rubric of how to select the right doctor, because that's going to be your mentor. It's going to be the person
Correct.
that's modeling for you. And basically, you're going to be more with them than at home. What would you say are the 3 characteristics of the perfect doctor to work for?
I think that the perfect doctor to work for is you want to have someone that's never going to talk down upon you, because you don't know everything, right? Nobody knows everything. But that doctor who's going to hold your hand throughout the process and lead the way with you, I think that's the most important part. Someone who's caring, knowledgeable, of course. And I think that those are the most important qualities in a provider to follow.
What do you think from your current doctor you admire the most as a nurse?
I admire that when he sits in an exam room with a patient, he's himself, you know? He will talk to the patient, tell them everything, and then he will have a decent conversation with the patient and be like, so how's your family? How are you doing? How's, you know, fulanito? And that's beautiful because you feel that connection with that doctor. You know that doctor's, okay, he's a doctor, but he's acknowledging my life. And you don't see that a lot, you know, nowadays. So every time I'm in a room with him and I see that he's having, you know, interactions with the patient aside from the medical part of it, you know, I'm like, that's how I want to be when I'm a doctor, because I want to have that connection with the patients and be like, how are your kids? How old are they now? You know, and build that familiarity.
Let me ask you, as you were growing up, did you always want to be in the medical field or did you have other careers? And if so, when did you decide I want to be in the medical field?
No, I knew I always wanted to be in the medical field. I was very indecisive whether nursing or if I should have pursued, my MD per se. I think more when I was in high school between my 9th and 10th grade that I decided to, complete high school in 3 years. I started doing like working in the medical field per se. I went into dentistry. I thought I wanted to do dental. So I was just kind of figuring out at some point I wanted to do pediatrics. I was like, oh, I love kids. Like, let me give that a try. I did it for 3 years. I did enjoy it a lot, but I was like, okay, maybe let's try something else. And then that's when I tried pulmonary, and that was in the process of starting nursing school. So all that experience helped me realize I wanted to be more of the nurse, because as the nurse, you work with the patient, like I've mentioned before, directly with them. The doctors in the hospitals, they just come in, hi, here are your orders, this is what you have, blah, blah, blah. Okay, bye. So you're the one taking charge of the patient. And that's why I was like, okay, this is what I want to do and why.
I heard you did high school in 3 years. So you took a non-traditional trajectory to finish high school. Tell me a little bit about that. When did you decide? How did that opportunity arise? And what did it do for your life?
Correct. Yes. So I'm always running in life. I'm trying to slow down lately. That was the process because everyone goes into dual enrollment where you get your AA while you're doing your high school. But I was like, no, I want to finish high school and get it over with, because I already knew I wanted to go into nursing school, and I had that game plan set up. So I was like, I don't want to waste time. And I went and I spoke to my counselor and I was like, hey, what are my options? Can I graduate earlier? And she was like, oh, no, why would you want to do that? And I said, well, why not? And she was like, no, go into like your dual like enrollment, get your AA, and they gave me the hardest time. They were like, I don't think you know what you're doing. And I said, well, you know what? This is what I want to do. And you're going to help me, or I'm going to find my way around it. And I was very persistent with it. And thankfully, after many, calls and meetings with the principals and everything, I was able to get it down packed. However, I had a knee injury in between, and I almost thought, okay, I'm not going to be able to do this. But thankfully, I did. I was able to pull through.
Tell me about that knee injury. So you were on track. You went to your counselor. You were persistent. You fought to get the opportunity. Yeah. The knee injury comes, and it could have potentially made you go back to a traditional pathway, but you didn't. You were able to graduate on time with the goal you established and address your knee circumstance. Tell me about that. How did you do it, and what did you go through?
Yeah. Well, it happened right after they gave me the AOK. So I completed my freshman year, and then my 10th grade was the one that we did the 10th grade in person, and the 11th grade, I did it online through like the virtual school. So right in between that process of starting, I had my right knee injury. And I was informed that it had to be like an open knee surgery, because it was like an ACL with meniscus. So they told me, look, the downtime is going to be 9 months for this. I don't, you're going to need a lot of therapies. You're going to do, and, for a moment I was like, is this a sign that I need to just relax with school, let me do traditional and focus on my health? And thanks to me, and I was like, you know what? No, I'm not going to let this situation pull me back from what I want to do. So I had the knee surgery, and I kept doing things from school. I had friends bring me assignments. I was not taking a no for an answer. I was like, we're going to continue this plan because this is what I want to do. And it was hard. It was very hard moments, but thanks to my family and the support system that I had, I was able to manage.
What life lesson did that moment in your life teach you? So you thought you were going to get ahead. You thought you had a plan. You thought you were in control in the chauffeur seat. All of a sudden, life threw you this first obstacle in your life of knee surgery in the midst of all this 9 months announcement, recovery, work, but you overcame it. What was the life lesson you took from that our listeners could benefit from understanding?
Well, that was the first curveball I had received at such a young age. I was only 14, 15 years old. And like I said, I thought it was more of a, this is a sign, stop what you're doing. But I took it as, I'm not going to let this interfere with what my passion and what I want to do, my goals. And I knew if I would have been, let down by that decision. So I think that whenever life throws you a curveball, it's very important to recognize the curveball and how to address it and go forward, right? And not let it affect your goals.
So you heard it straight from a person that since a very young age has received curveballs that have been unexpected in the midst of the most critical plans of her life. And the first life lesson that she quickly learned at an early stage was when a curveball comes your way, analyze it, unpack it, but with a solution mindset. And the only non-negotiable is your goal at the end. And we understood that that was very, very important. And she was able to overcome it and graduate on time. And she met her goal of finishing high school in 3 years. A very important life lesson. But that wasn't all. Now you went to college and you started at FIU, correct?
Yes.
And tell me about that.
So I did a Connect for Success program because I had applied into their nursing school program. And they put me on a waiting list because, it was a very full program. Nursing is a very populated career. So I did the AA part of it in Miami-Dade. It's a great program. And once I finished the AA portion of the nursing part, that I was ready to transition into FIU, they did not have a seat available and I was going to have to wait another year, right? So at that moment, I sat down and I started to think, I'm like, do I really want to wait 1 year when I can look into another program that might let me do it quicker and start right now? It was a hard decision because, FIU is a very known school. It's, it's what I had dreamt of. But I was like, no, we're going to look. And I started going around to different nursing school programs. And I had heard of West Coast University. It's in Doral, Florida. And I went. I had, a meeting and I had a tour. And I was like, it felt like home. I said, this feels like where I'm supposed to be. And that's exactly how it happened. I went. I had, I met the advisors, the financial aid process. And they told me, okay, we'll transfer your credits and within a couple weeks, you're ready to start the semester. And I'll never forget, it was June of 2019 that I started the process with them.
Let me ask you, when you're choosing a school, particularly for the medical field, what were the things that really you would share with our with our listeners that they should take into account when they're selecting a school?
Well, I think that the biggest thing was, especially when you're going into a program that you need to take an exit exam, like for example, nursing, you need to take your NCLEX. That's what gives you your license. The biggest thing for me was their success rate as a school.
Looking at their data.
Yeah, looking at their data, their statistics. I don't really go based off reviews per se because, they can be biased. So I looked more into their success rate, the statistics, and they, at the time, they had a 98% passing rate. So to me, that shows a lot, right? And I had heard from another student that was previously in that program, and she told me, don't even think about it. It's great. The teachers are wonderful. They're going to show you what you need to pass that test. And that's exactly how it was. I do not regret going to West Coast University. And that's why I decided to pursue my nurse practitioner with them.
Awesome. And would you say that their data spoke for themselves in your life? Did you pass your test on the first time?
Oh, yes. I sat down for the NCLEX and I was like, this is what the NCLEX is. It was, I remember texting a very good professor of mine and I told her, I just took the NCLEX and I felt like it was just another quiz. I know it's not the same experience for everyone, but I definitely do think they prepared me exactly for it. Well, to the point that I was like, oh, wow, okay. I was over-prepared, and you want to be over-prepared. You just want to pass it at the first try and that's it. So
when you started your high school acceleration, life threw you the curveball of knee surgery. You started your nursing program. And 6 months into it, life threw you another curveball, but this time a life-threatening one, open heart surgery. Tell me about the story. How did it all get diagnosed? What happened, and what did end up being the success story of that?
Yeah, that was a story. Definitely very shaking. So I started West Coast in June of 2019. I had to do a little bit of prerequisites with them, like the mandatory ones, even though I had transferred credits from Miami-Dade. And December of 2019, I was at work. It was a winter break between school. And I used to work at a front desk position. And I started to feel like, like very hot chest pain. Like basically like if I was, like being choked. And one of my coworkers was like, "Hey, Ashley, like you're really red." And I was like, "No, I mean, typically I have blushy cheeks." And she told me, "No, you look at yourself." And I did. And I was like a tomato. So she's like, "Go step out and, take your blood pressure." So I went to the medical side of it and they took my blood pressure and she was like, "This is not normal. Let me get it and take it manually." And indeed, my blood pressure was super high, like 186 over 110. My pulse was 120. And
you must have been freaking out.
Yeah, I was freaking out. I was like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" And, thankfully, I've always been a very healthy, girl. And I was like, okay, so, am the manager for the clinical side was like, "What were you doing?" I was like, "Nothing. I was just working, She's like, "Did something get you mad or something?" I was like, "No." Okay. So they told me, "Well, you need to go to the hospital, obviously, because this is not normal." And I told her, "Yeah, no, I definitely will." She's like, "Well, we're going to call 911. I was like, no, we're not going to do that. I called my mom. She works in a hospital as well, far. My dad was by Boca, far. And I was just like, okay, well, she's like, "Okay, well, you're not driving." There goes Ashley. She gets in the car and I drove to the nearest hospital. I get to
Talk about determination. You're having blood pressure at such a high level, chest pains, you're red as a tomato, but instead of calling 911, you get in the car.
Yeah, I get in the car.
I don't know about
smart.
that. Don't do that. Don't
do
that.
Don't do that. But, I was like, no, because I didn't want to go to the hospital right next door. So I was like, I'm going to drive to the hospital I want to go to. So I felt fine. I called my mom and she's
always
like,
in control.
Yeah, I called my mom and she stayed on the phone, of course, until I got to the hospital and then she met me there. So indeed, my blood pressure was super high. They did an EKG. It was normal. So then they checked the troponin levels, which will, let you know if you're having a heart attack at the moment. And all of that was negative. So they were like, "Oh, this is a panic attack." And I was like, "A panic attack? What do you mean?" I was at work. I was relaxing. "Oh, well, what were you thinking of?" I was like, "I was checking in patients. I'm in a winter break. I just passed my classes. There's nothing to be concerned about." Well, that was that. They let me go 8 hours later because it took 8 hours to bring down my blood pressure. Mind you, they just gave me water and like Tylenol. Nothing crazy. So I felt very dismissed and I felt like my body was giving me signs that something was wrong. And I needed answers. So I went to my primary care doctor, Dr. Natalie Sanchez, and I sat in her exam room and I told her, "Listen, this is going on." And she knows me very well. And she was like, "Definitely something's wrong. So I want you to either see a cardiologist or a nephrologist to see your kidneys." And, thankfully she has a lot of connections and that was already January of 2021, right? Yeah. And she refers me to a cardiologist and I go right away and we have the conversation and he goes, "Oh, I think this is what's called white coat syndrome." And I go, "What is that?" And he goes, "Yeah, whenever you are exposed to like the healthcare environment, your blood pressure gets high." And I said, "No. I mean, I'm going to be a nurse. I love the hospitals. I love being around doctors." So he was like, "Well, I mean, a girl your age, that was a one-day thing. It's not logical." And, thankfully my mom was like, "Look, this is not normal. Can you just send her an echocardiogram?" I was very concerned because my feet were getting really swollen. And, I was like, "What's going on?" Right. So I was more worried. I didn't think it was my heart. I was more worried for my legs. So he sends me the ultrasounds. And he was like, "Fine, I'm going to send it to you. I know it's nothing, but here, get it done." That was January. So then in February, COVID came and everything closed. So we kind of just, prolonged it a little bit until May. And then in May, I had everything done. And well, yeah, unfortunately, from one day to the next, I'll never forget it. It was a Thursday. I had the MRI. I had first the echocardiogram. And it was almost like a 2.5 hour echocardiogram. But I never would have thought anything about it. And that Friday after, I got a call from his office, the cardiologist, and he tells me, "I need to schedule you for a stat MRI." So my dad was like, "Oh my God, no, they're just trying to charge the insurance. We're in COVID, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "You think so?" I was like, "Oh, okay." So he tells me, "Look, you have a condition called an ASD. It's, you know, a little hole in your heart, and we need an MRI to tell us the exact location.
Wow. You get a call and you're told you have a hole in your heart. That has to be devastating. How did you feel? What did you do? What was that total reaction? Because, I mean, I can't even imagine the things that went through your mind.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was in shock. Honestly, I felt so cold, and I was like, well, okay, how do you close this hole? Like, that was literally the first thing that came to my mind. I was like, okay, there's a hole. How do we close it? Like, you know, because you know how I am. I'm very like, okay, let's cut to the chase. And I was like, is there a pill for this? And he was like, no, we need to do like a type of surgery. Now, I can't tell you until we do the MRI. But maybe, he's like, I'm hopeful that it will just be through cardiac cath, and, you know, we'll go from there. And I said, okay. We get the MRI done the following week. And I believe that was like a Wednesday, Thursday. And my brother comes to town to be with me for the results. It was a Friday, and I was taking finals that day. It was a very hard day, and he was like, oh, it's very important that I need to talk to you. It was a Friday. We were actually going to go out of town. My brother was going to take me to Orlando to be with him. And I told him, okay, come, let me finish my finals. I'll have the doctor visit, and then we'll go to Orlando and we'll have a nice time. So I take the first final in the morning, and in between that final and then the next one, it was the phone call at 12 o'clock. And it was through telehealth because it was COVID time. Mm-hmm. So I answered that telehealth, and I just saw it in his face, in that doctor's face. He was in a conference room. It was dim, and he didn't even know how to look at me. And he said, I have to tell you something, and it's very hard, because he knew that he was about to dismiss my case also at some point. And how do you go from that to you need to have open heart surgery, right? And at that moment, I just felt like my life fall apart, you know? Because you can have a fractured arm. You can have, you know, anything wrong. But the heart's the motor. And I was like, oh my God, you know, what do we do now?
So when he told you have open heart surgery, you're listening to all of that in your mind. You're in school. You're in the midst of finals. You just started your nursing career. All these things start coming to mind. What did you do? How did you solve it? What did you think? What were the emotions? And more importantly, the life lesson you used?
Well, it was a little bit of a ruckus, because it's not now that anyone could just do the surgery, because it was a congenital heart defect. So an adult cardiovascular surgeon or cardiothoracic surgeon couldn't do it, because it's not that they couldn't do it, it's that they wouldn't take the case because of the experience. You know, they were scared to do something wrong, especially at my age. I'm 20 years old, right? So at that time. And it was, you know, thankfully to my uncle, who's, you know, a provider, he helped get all the calls in and make the moves. And finally, I had Dr. Redmond Burke in Nicholas Children's Hospital. And he took my case from one day to the next. And he said, absolutely, don't worry about it. And I was like, you know, oh my God, like, this is amazing. Because we were even looking to going to Texas, you know, because they have a great heart institute over there. Going to New York, like, because most of the known providers here in Miami were saying no, right? Because it was a risky surgery.
I can only imagine you have this circumstance, your life is on the line, and you have to find the best doctor. People are saying no. And to think that they dismissed it and you wouldn't have researched it deep enough, you wouldn't have known.
Yeah, I know.
And I think for our listeners, that's a very important life lesson. Your body doesn't lie to you. And no matter what the doctors tell you, no matter who dismisses what you feel, you are the one feeling it. And it's important that when you do, you go after the first, the second, the third, even the fourth opinion. But you got to make sure that you are satisfied with what you are being told, because it is your life that you are in charge of. And no one else can know better what you feel than you. I think that's really important. And other than that, you go back to your history. You were in high school, you throw the knee surgery to. You are in college now on your nursing program, and here comes open heart surgery. Yep. Emotionally, what did you do to be able to recuperate and give yourself that me time to overcome that?
Yeah, it was a hard transition, because I have the heart surgery, and obviously that's, you know, also they were telling me, oh, for like about a year, you're going to need to take like a leave from school. And I said, a year? I said, are you crazy? So they were like, you don't know the complications and the recovery because they have to break the sternum. And they're like, that's very painful and the recovery is hard. So, well, I had to meet with the advisors in my school. I actually didn't end up passing that first semester of my core because it was in the transition of, that took like 2-3 weeks to get to the surgery. So you can imagine my head was just everywhere.
Of course.
So I couldn't pass it. I didn't. I got an 89, I think, on the final, and I needed like a 92. So I was almost there, but I was very hard on myself, and I said, you know what, Ashley, it's time to focus on your health. I met with my advisors, and they told me, look, take at least 3 or 4 semesters off. And I said, okay, well, just, and they gave me the leave of absence with 6 semesters off with no issue. I have the surgery. I did have some minor complications afterwards that are expected. And I remember it was, our semesters there were 8 weeks long. And I said, I'm going to start in 8 weeks. And indeed, I went home after recovery and the support of my family and my loved ones. I made a call to school and I said, hey, I'm going to start next term. And they're like, are you crazy? That's 1 semester off only. And I said, no, I'm going to do it. I'm ready. And they were like, well, okay, we'll give you only 1 class. And I said, no, you're going to give me the full package. And thankfully I did. And it was hard, but what I can say is, you never let go of what you want to do. And no matter how big that obstacle is, you just have to try to overcome it and not like lose sight of the goal.
So you heard it straight from her again. Another curveball in her life. She could have stopped, taken 6 semester leave, authorized by the university with no consequence. But she was so committed to her goal that was what she utilized as the motivation, coupled with her determination to get to that success. Today, she's a nurse as a result of that. She's not only a nurse, she's on her way to get a nurse practitioner license and being able to continue the journey that she once designed because she didn't allow life to tell her, stop. She took the curveball, analyzed it, unpacked it, and decided what she was going to do to make sure she could recover from the curveball, at the same time, continue her path and her goal. And now you're a nurse. You are working, you're in your job, you're learning, you're your nurse practitioner.
Yes.
And again, life throws you another curveball. Here, you had a lifelong relationship that you thought was forever, and all of a sudden it turned to be a season in your life and not a lifetime. Tell me about that.
Yeah, that was another big one. One that I wouldn't have expected. 8 years later, it was earth-shattering as well. Obviously not as big as my heart surgery. But it was painful because it was someone that I was willing to grow old with, right? And I've spoken to multiple people and, we all have our flaws, right? I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. And it was someone that I really looked into and I was like, we can help each other grow together. And I did. I helped him grow and he helped me grow. And we were there in our toughest times for each other. And I think that's what was the most beautiful part of our relationship. We got to a point that I was like, okay, we're going to get married. I want to have a future with you. Let's move out. Let's, think about kids in the future. And yeah, from one day to the next, I guess that just didn't work out anymore. And I mean, that blew my mind. I did not even know, it comes to a point where you're with someone for 8 years and then all of a sudden you're sitting in your bed and you have no one. And it was a very difficult point. I was borderline depressed. I didn't want to eat. I lost a lot of weight. And I took some time to reflect a couple weeks later. And I said, if I overcame everything that I did, right? And I still kept going because at that point, I didn't even want to do school. I was like, oh my God, what's going on? Like, you lose that person that you want to be with, that you love. And now you feel alone. I lost a lot of my friends because I dedicated a lot of time into that relationship. I do not regret it. But you realize that you're like, oh, wow, now I'm really alone. Now, you have your family always. But you didn't have friends there to support you. And well, we tried it out again and that didn't really work out. But I needed that second chance to realize, that we're just in different places right now in our life. And that's okay. You grow and you learn. And I will always have him in a very special place in my heart. But that came to an end. And right now I've been just working on myself, on my school, making friends, going out, alone. Today I had lunch by myself and I treated myself and I said, wow, this is amazing. Things that I hadn't done before because I was, with him. I'm learning to love to do it by myself now.
Let me ask you, so you have a lot of listeners out there that potentially are going through the same thing you are going through and had this relationship for so long and thought it was a lifetime, building a lifetime, never ever thinking that anything else was going to be a need to focus on. Maybe letting go of friends just like you let go of and dedicating 100%. In some cases, some relationships even exclude their family, focused on the relationship. What advice would you give them after living what you've lived and understanding what true life really means post a relationship?
I think that everyone should always listen to the advice of those family around you. A lot of people always told me, listen, be careful. There's signs there, he's a great guy, but he might just not be the one for you. And, you always just want to, oh no, this is a person I want to be with and I'm going to, keep going. And there were signs there that I was like, oh my God, is this really, the one? But I think that and I knew it. Deep down, I knew something there. I was like, this is not the person for me, but I'm willing to settle. And I think that's what happens. People, they learn to settle because they're scared of the unknown. And I say it from experience. I was like, nope, I'd rather be with someone that I know that is going to be there rather than meeting new people because I don't know how they're going to be and if they're going to like me and if I'm going to be enough. And I think people should learn not to settle and not be scared of what can come to you, right? Relationships are difficult, whether it's partners, friendships, but it's very important not to let go of those around you, right? Your friends, they always need to be there for you, right? And they will be. But relationships, those are more difficult.
So you heard it from someone again that a third curveball in her life, all three of them could have been life-changing, but she went about it differently depending on the circumstance. But she used one foundational trait in her, which is I unpack it, I own it, and I solve it. I'm determined to overcome it. And the one thing that I will leave second to nothing is my goals, my future, my life, because I got one life to live. And she was able to overcome that. And from her, in a situation that today most of our young people are struggling from, which is I started a relationship very early. I have built a lifetime around that relationship. I've never practically been alone. Now I have to be alone. What do I do? And as you heard directly from her, keep going and understand that there's a place and a time for everything. And don't let a person that says no to you become your own no to yourself. Absolutely. Ashley, as you now continue the next journey in your life, you're on your way to get your nurse practitioner license. And what is going to be your specialty? What are you aiming to do? Mm-hmm. What's next with that career when you do graduate?
Well, yes, that's my big plan this year is to move forward with my nurse practitioner, graduate. And right now I am aiming more into pulmonary. Awesome. It is what I'm working in right now, and I have learned to love it. I know internal medicine's not for me, but I do like that. And due to my history, cardiology is my second option because in the time period that I worked in the hospital, I did encounter a lot of patients with open heart surgery, and they were in a place where I was in, right? Giving up. And I would be like, hey, look, I'm going to show you my scar. What are you doing? No. Yeah, you're older than me because there would be older geriatric population. But if I didn't give up, you shouldn't give up. So I think that cardiology is definitely between pulmonary and cardiology just because of my experience in both right now. And I think they both hold a very special place in my heart.
Let me ask you, Ashley, in life, we have to sit back and think, and all of our experiences are a puzzle piece to an overarching puzzle that life is trying to create with our story. In the 24 years that you've lived, you've had major curveballs in your life. You've overcome them. What do you think is the story that life is trying to tell the world through your life and your experience?
I think, like we've mentioned before, is no matter how big curveballs can be in life or when they come, because it's when you probably least expect them, it's don't give up on your dreams. Don't give up on yourself, and do what you want to do at the end of the day, you know? Like you said, we need to acknowledge them. We need to know how to overcome them, because, you know, obviously just ignoring them is not going to be the solution to it. But from my story, it's, you know, continue positive, never lose your smile, because unfortunately, when situations like that come at hand, it brings out, you know, the sadness in you, the ugly. And sometimes that's what people want to see, because you're doing so good and there's not a lot of good people out there also, and they're like, oh, you know, whatever, let's see what's her breaking point. And I think it's very important to never show everyone your breaking point. You need to stay strong, positive, happy, and, you know, you deal with those demons on your own, little by little, right?
You know, there's a lot of people out there that today have those demons. They don't know how to deal with them. They go into panic attacks and sometimes tend to make the wrong decision. Have you been in that moment, and how have you avoided making the wrong decision that so many of our listeners could be in the verge of making and don't have anyone to help them? And you could be that voice that saves them and makes them change their mind from making the wrong decision to the right decision.
Yeah.
Well, how would you tell them they need to deal with that moment?
I think we all always have a little demon in us that is trying to bring us down, right? And I think that the most important thing is recognizing it and learning how to go about it. And, you know, if you have that gut feeling that this is wrong, that this is no good, that this is not going to lead to anything positive towards your future or your present, actually, you need to let it go. You need to look at, how am I going to fix this, right? No, nothing negative. You know, you have to bring out the happiness. And if it's something that you need to look out for extra resources, help, don't be afraid to do so. There's nothing wrong with, you know, asking for help. And I think that's something that a lot of people nowadays are scared to, because they're going to be like, oh, I'm vulnerable, right? They're showing their vulnerability to the world. And that's okay. Everyone goes through something, right? Whether it's something big, something small, you just have to recognize it and search for help, because sometimes us ourselves don't have the power to do it, right? So whether it's medical, whether it's resources, that's the most important
Let me
thing.
ask you, you have such tenacity and endurance. I mean, you are a role model for the world with regards to determination and that strength. You know, I'm an Avenger person. So to me, you remind me of Wonder Woman, you know, before that battlefield with just a shield, a sword, bracelets, and she was going to go across on her own because she knew she needed to get across. Who did you learn that from? Who inspired that to you? Who is that person that, or people that support you to make you have that skill? Because that's not something that just is born. It's something that you have to have seen in someone else that develops that in you. Who would you say is that person that is your go-to when in that moment of despair?
Well, I do have a lot of role models in my family, in my close ones. But I do have to say that in this precise moment, I learned that from my grandfather, Evelio Lasso. He went through a lot in his childhood, and even when we were growing up, because I loved to spend a lot of time with him and my grandmother. To me, they're the world. And he always showed us that no matter how hard it gets in life, you always get up and you keep going. You keep going, you know? And you have to be strong in life, you know? There's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of bad people out there, and more bad than good. And you need to be strong for those moments, right? And he showed us everything. He showed us the financial aspects. He's always said, hey, you always have to have cash on you. And if you have $10, always save at least $2 because you never know when you're going to need those $2 cash. And he was a wonderful person, and I love him very much, and he gave us the strength to me, and I think to the rest of my cousins.
Would you say that there was a moment in his life that you saw that gave you that example of what you've had to use in your own life?
Yeah. He was involved in a car accident as well. He also had a knee injury and open knee as well with like, what's it called? Like medals and everything. And they told him the same thing, you know. He was a very hard worker, and they told him, listen, you're never going to be able to drive again. You got to relax, stay home, and just, you know, stay home and relax. And he said, absolutely not. He says, nope, that's not what I'm going to do. And of course, he took his time to recover, which was very brief, just like mine. And he proved everyone wrong. He said, I'm going to show everyone that I can do it. And indeed, he went back to work. He kept driving after that, you know, with more precaution. And I learned that from him, I think, that you never let someone tell you cannot do something. You know, you're going to prove them wrong.
And if he was talking to you right now and seeing you in this podcast after everything you've gone through, what do you think he would tell you your next steps in life should be?
Well, if he was here, I think he would be telling me that my next steps, of course, right now is to just focus on my school. Because, you know, a lot has happened recently. And I think he would be most proud to see me one day walking down that stage with my white coat, my stethoscope, and being able to be a provider. And from there, learn to continue being by myself, grow by myself, and, you know, disfrutar la vida, which is something that I think he would want for me to do.
You know, I always, as I mentor people in life, as a life coach, I always tell them that a lot of people make the mistake of thinking they have to find someone or something to be complete.
Yeah.
And that completeness is really first with us, and then we share completeness with
Correct.
others. And so I think that given everything you've shared, it would be great for you to focus that time on curing those scars and finding the state of completeness within you before you go to your next stage in life and be able to do that. You've been through a lot. You've accomplished a lot. You most recently went through a relationship. If you were to design the perfect next person that's going to share your life with, what would be those 3 characteristics that you think after what you've been through, what you've learned, are essential, non-negotiables for you that maybe were not the ones you thought before, but now are very important to you?
Well, I have thought about that. And like you said, I am learning to be by myself, get to know myself, because you lose yourself also invested in a relationship. And that's okay. It's just you can never lose your center, right? And
I call it your north.
Oh, well. So now I've learned, what do I want in that future person? Because now I'm in a different stage as a professional, right? And I need to, you know, live up to that standard. So I think that if I can design that person, I would want that person to just be as hardworking as I am, have goals, and that you're actually trying to pursue them, and that you're willing to catch the next flight we can, because, you know, I love spontaneousness, and I love to travel. So as long as he's loving, caring, hardworking, and it doesn't matter how he looks, or, you know, of course, I would hope he's a little taller than me and makes me laugh just a little bit. But as long as he's a good person, he's family oriented, because family to me is a very big essential part. And as long as he has those qualities and he's honest, that would be a good candidate.
You know, a trajectory like yours is definitely one that leaves a legacy for the world. And you've already left such a legacy, not only on this podcast through your story for others, but through your own modeling in your own life. At the end of your life, when you're in that moment in which is that last couple of minutes and you have the opportunity to reflect, what would your legacy be that you want to make sure you've been able to leave for others?
Yeah. I think that what I would want to impact the world with is just, you know, keep going, never give up. And I hope that when I do become a provider, that I'm able to, just like the provider I work with right now, show them that there is someone who cares for you, right? And who's willing to always go to any extent just to make sure that you feel better. And when those patients come back, and they're better, they're like, oh my God, thank you so much. I want to leave that trajectory. Like, that's my legend. Like, I want for everyone to be like, wow, nurse practitioner Ashley, she was amazing. She was great, not only professional, but as a person. And that's really what I want, for people to see me as and love me, hopefully in the future.
As we come to the end of our podcast, when we get to the end of our lives, a lot of people have the opportunity of talking about us and saying what we would have wanted to say. In this moment, you have the opportunity to thank people, to say to people. If you had to speak to somebody who was listening to you right now and you wanted to share something with that you have inside that maybe sometimes when we're with them we can't, who would that be and what would you want to say?
Yeah, that's a big one. But I would definitely give an advice to a loved one, my brother. And I hope he listens to this. And I just would share with him that don't let any curveball, like this podcast is based off of, bring you down, right? Don't lose your north, and whatever the aspect may be. And just learn yourself, be yourself, and put yourself first. I think that a lot of people need to hear that. You need to think about yourself, and sometimes not everyone around you.
Well, I hope that he's listening to that, because that's definitely good advice. And if there's someone that you would like to say thank you to for inspiring your life, being there for you, or someone that you feel has been responsible for who you are today, who would that be, and what would you want to say that to? Well,
I would love to say thank you to my parents, who were a very big part of every curveball that has happened. They have always been there every step of the way, holding me, bringing me up, and in every side, even in nursing school, because financially I couldn't, sustain myself, and they never asked me for anything, right? So they've been there every step of the way. They continue to do so. And I love them very much for that. And that's something that I can never thank them enough for.
As we close the podcast, a lot of people say to overcome obstacles and curveballs, you need faith. Are you a faith-based person? And if so, what has kept you going? What do you depend on, and who's been your north?
Yeah, definitely. I think that I am a very faithful person. I have had a lot of signs in life. I do believe in like little things like that. And I think that, you just can't lose your north. And it doesn't have to be like a precise person. I think that, as long as you are happy, faithful, and you learn to look at those obstacles like a possibility to grow, that you will be okay.
Ashley, I want to thank you on behalf of Liwa Jeffrey for being on our podcast today. I've been inspired by listening to you. I know our listeners have been inspired. So much that she has shared, so many of you could benefit from. Whether it's the same situations that she's confronted or the skills that she utilized to overcome her circumstances, help you in your circumstances. Today we heard, it doesn't matter what curveball comes your way, stick to your goals and make sure you action to achieve them. Don't let anyone or anything stop you from reaching what you have designed for your life. You are the painter of your canvas, and you make the decision what color you use, what paintbrush you use, and more importantly, when you do it, despite the obstacles that may come your way. You also heard, don't let anyone define you or stop you in any circumstance. You may dedicate time to a relationship, you may dedicate time to a business, you may dedicate time to a career, but make sure you're dedicating time to you, and that you should prioritize you over anyone or anything, because at the end, when everyone else leaves, you are the one that's going to be there for you. You also need to surround yourself with a support system, because all of us are going to have moments in which we need that support system to overcome what we are confronted with that sometimes may be unexpected. And more importantly, when you are in that circumstance, don't be afraid to say, I need help. That doesn't make you weak. It actually makes you stronger, because in that collaboration and that thought partnership, you're going to be able to achieve overcoming it and not falling through the cracks. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been my honor to be with you today in this podcast. I hope you found all of this information as inspiring as I did. And as I always say, stay inspired.